Recording?
Yeah.
Recording.
Yay! I love it. All right, guys. My name is Sam.
And I'm Mason.
And you know it's good when you hear right company.
Ooh, you did good.
Really? Blind faith.
I feel like our intro is us awkwardly being like, hi, we do the thing, and then we comment on how well we did the thing, and that's like the intro. It's never just a smooth like, hey, nice to see you guys. It's like,
I think it sets the tone for the lack of professionalism we're about to bring to the table.
That's fair.
It lowers expectations of like, oh, this is a unit that's really got it together. Like, no, we are totally winging this bitch. Enjoy the ride.
This is a zero budget production. Check out my fancy lighting. Hey.
Oh man. Well, you guys, you are in for a treat because today we are doing History 2, Right or Wrong, and Crossing the Line. And I have to say, I feel like, Mason, your investment in History 1 is paying off with History 2 because History 1 being way less than your fave kind of set your expectations low. And when you got into History 2, you're like, oh, wait a minute, this is actually decent.
It was competent.
Yes.
It.
And that's all we can ask. We ask for constant improvement. And since we've already seen History 3, I can firmly say that this is a team that learns their lessons.
Yeah, and if History 4, which the rumblings of it being made are out there, so fingers crossed, we love History 4. It's like, where could they even go from History 3? It's like, they kind of did the perfect shows,
Happy ending. That's where they could go with History 3 or 4 is happy ending. So let's just talk about that now. It's something we normally reserve for the rambling portion of the show, but there is a rumor that they are quietly, secretly casting and beginning production for History 4. And the reason why it's supposedly being done very quietly is because people were enraged about History 3. Specifically Make Our Days Count. A lot of people just absolutely hated that. And so I can see where a quiet investment company, like some super rich Chinese cajillionaire is like, hey, this boys love thing is a fad. I need to launder some money somewhere. How about I help you make History 4? And that's how this gets made. But people that are involved in the production not wanting the backlash, so like, okay, let's do this extremely hush-hush and then spring it on the public.
Right.
So, yeah, if History 4 is made, I'm already reserving a space on the shelf for greatest BL of all time.
I'm one of those people where it's like, I never want to get my hopes up too much, so I always try to tell myself it could be worse. What if it gets worse again?
Yeah. I mean, I just
can't, because they did such a good job. And History 2 really is like a marked improvement. Like, full disclosure, did not like any part of History 1. I will not rewatch anything in History 1 ever, probably. I thought the acting was good. I think that's like the one saving grace in like all of history. It's like they cast really well. Mm-hmm. But man, History 2, spoiler, I really liked both of them. It was a really enjoyable watch. I spent all of yesterday watching it, and it was great. I took an edible, and I hung out, and I had some ice cream, and what more could you want for a Saturday night? And watching two hot guys play volleyball. Making out afterwards.
Okay. So we're going to do the same thing we did the last time, where we're going to talk about each story arc separately, and then we'll do our ratings and whatever else. So we're going to start with History 2, Right or Wrong, which is a synopsis that, Mason, do you want me to give or do you want to give?
I can give it.
Okay.
So Right or Wrong is about a college student who is about 19 years old, and he ends up becoming like the nanny for his professor's 5-year-old daughter. So his professor.
No, she's 7. She's 7.
She's 7. Okay. His professor's young daughter, and about how the professor and the student end up falling in love. That's the short synopsis.
So me and Mason talked about this before we even got on camera. We are not going to be able to do proper names here because
Nope.
I don't want to seem like I'm being offensive. A lot of the names have very similar pronunciations and I get confused easily. So we're going to be doing nicknames for the characters for both of these story arcs.
Mm-hmm.
So our main characters are the professor, the nanny, the little girl or the daughter, the best friend, the hot director, and the evil ex.
Mm-hmm.
And that pretty much covers all of our bases for history, right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll let you start with what it is about this show that you think was done successfully.
I think, as I said earlier, they cast all the history shows really well. I thought all of the acting, for the most part, was really good. Some hiccups here and there, but overall really good. The cinematography was a lot better. Still some issues, a lot of line of action jumping. But I thought that the progression from not really knowing each other to relationship was done well. Like, I liked it. I thought it was cute. And I think it has a really sweet ending. Like, I really liked the last, 5 minutes, just smile on my face. Really, really sweet.
Yeah, like this honestly has the most happy ever after ending of any of the history shows that have been produced so far, including History 3 Trapped. Like this ending is just spoiler, marriage and a kiddo.
Mm-hmm.
That is the ending. And that's just, I mean, can you get any happier than that?
It's so sweet. I really like how this show bucks a couple of boys love trends. Like there were things that came up and I was like, oh man, it's gonna be that boys love thing and I'm gonna be rolling my eyes. And I didn't, and they did a good job.
So what was one of the things that was like a boys love trope that they subverted for you?
So, it's a boys love. So at some point the couple has to get together and then break up for a whatever reason. And I thought the reason they broke up was very interesting. So the teacher guy, he actually goes to student's mom and he's like, look, I know I'm older, but I would really like to date your son. Kind of like, can I have your blessing? And she's like, he's been hurt before. This kid got massively bullied for being gay when he was in high school. And like this guy that he had a crush on, watched him get bullied and said, nope, I don't like him. Who would like a fag like that? And you're like, oh. So kid's got some trauma. And the mom's like, I really don't want to see him get hurt again, but I'll let you date him. But you see this knife? You see this knife? It's coming for you. You're like, oh, okay. So, of course, I was like, oh, he's going to do something. They're going to break up, but it's going to be on him, and the mom's going to get upset, and it's going to be like a tiresome thing. But no, it's not. They don't break up because the teacher did something wrong. They break up because the student did something wrong. And what the student did was the student essentially his own internalized homophobia caused a rift between them because the student knew he was gay for a while. The teacher kind of didn't really know. He was just kind of like, wow, I fell in love with this person. How great. Like he didn't really overthink it too much, which was nice. And the student's like, oh, you should, your wife is trying to come back into the picture. You should stay with her. You should have a normal life. And he's like, no, I'm all in, kid. I don't know what your problem is. This is, Don't try to get me back with my ex-wife. I'm here for you. I'm all in. It was sweet that he was so, immediately all in, and that it was the kid that had the problem. I shouldn't say kid. He was an adult. The student that had the problem with it. I liked that. I was like, that's actually a good rift, and I liked how it was resolved.
Yeah. A lot of people had an issue with the fact that there was a large age gap between the professor and the nanny. There's a 12-year age gap. The nanny is 19, the professor is 31.
Mm-hmm.
They say their ages very clearly in the show, which is why I'm giving them to you now.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people felt like that was too large of an age gap in terms of life experience and things of that nature. And also the fact that the professor is the professor for the nanny. He is actually a student in one of the professor's classes. And so power imbalance, power dynamic was a big source of contention from the comments I could see on Viki when people were talking about the show. And I think probably if the age gap wasn't as large, people wouldn't have had as big of a problem with it. But the fact that he was this young man's professor, I think automatically people are thinking you're not on even playing fields because you can affect his future if you guys don't get along.
Yeah, it was really close to being grooming.
Yeah.
Like,
But
when
I
I
think
started watching it, I was like, let's see how this plays out. You know?
yeah, I think the thing that kept it from going there or being grooming was the fact that the professor didn't start out with an agenda. Like that, he never had the intention of I'm gonna make you mine, or
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm gonna do things to you to get a certain result. The professor really was just kind of like lost in his own depression for a good chunk of the action. And then when he finally wakes up out of his stupor, he knows that he cares about this kid. He knows that they're becoming closer. But it doesn't seem like he had the intention of, I'm going to use his grades or use his schooling to get him to do the things I want him to do. Everything felt like we just kind of naturally fell in love, and this is another circumstance that's a part of our world.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was handled really nicely.
I do too.
Yeah.
So I also like that they had the little girl character be like a main character. And she like was established with her own personality and issues and stuff, and like she worked together with the two of them really well.
Yes, I thought that the little girl that they had play in the show, number one, as a Shawa, if you've ever watched Hello Baby, she looks like Yugim, who was the child in Hello Baby, but that's a side note. I thought that they did a really good job of not making her too precocious. Sometimes when they have kids on shows, like they've used the kids as like a wingman, or they kind of put too much kind of intelligence, or they make them like older than they really are. And she very much played a kid's role, and I appreciated that a lot, because on the one hand she did have to be a little bit more mature because she had a father who didn't have time to raise her, and so she had to learn how to do a lot of stuff on her own. But you could see as she came to rely on the nanny that she was allowed to have more of her childhood and kind of be more of the kid. And that made their little family feel so good, because all of her reactions to everything were like from a kid's point of view. Like when she was talking about, I'm gonna marry Brother Faye when I get older, and her dad's like, well, you can't because he promised to marry me. And she's like, but a man and a woman are who get married, not a man and a man. And she didn't like they didn't make her say stuff that didn't match. It really made it seem like she's just like, somebody told me this. Oh, it's not that way? All right, then I guess I'll marry the other boy in my class. Like, it just, yeah. And I really appreciated that they kept her very much in a kid's headspace. Yeah. So there were some things in this show that I thought were very interesting, because one of the things that history does really well when it comes to boys love is they always bring something a little different to the story that doesn't get talked about very much. And it makes the story kind of go out of just being a straight up boys love story to being a story about like other things that affect a person's life. And I thought that the theme of like people who have been neglected or felt like they were missing something as they were growing up, kind of finding that in a new form of family was a really neat note. So the nanny growing up, his mother worked all the time because his father died when he was really young. And he talked about how like he wanted his mother to be there and she couldn't be because she worked so hard. And so he spent a lot of time lonely. And then the professor grew up as an orphan. His family was killed in an accident. And after being bounced around from family member to family member, he ended up in the orphanage, which is how he actually met the mother of the nanny. So everybody's linked here. But both of them are people who have dealt with connection issues, like wanting to be loved by somebody, but being used to being alone and maybe not understanding how to proceed with like love. And so that was interesting. And then the little girl, she had like a stress stomach issue, like just from being stressed out, her body reacted. And watching her blossom once she starts to find like that connection with her dad getting reestablished, and him being a more reliable parent than he was in the past. And then also having this other figure in her life that is very much kind of a mother figure and another reliable person, so that she could be the kid that she's meant to be rather than trying to be a little bitty grown up. So I love how like as their family is coming together, everybody is getting something that they need out of that relationship.
Right.
Yeah. So let's talk about the ex-wife.
I was so mad when she popped up on my screen. I was like, not this line.
So one boys love trope that you'll always find in some form or another somewhere is the evil woman. Like the evil woman trope is a trope that boys love just adores, and I don't know why, but this one was a little bit different because I didn't get the feeling that she was evil for the sake of being evil. Because sometimes there's those characters that are just like, I'm a bitch and you're just gonna have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Instead it was like, I got the feeling from her that she was somebody who, like her brother said, you're extremely selfish. And when things didn't work out for you, you decided that you'd go for this backup plan. So how can anybody believe that you're really serious about what you're saying? And that's kind of what I got from her, that she didn't necessarily come in with the intention of like, I want to break up you and your new boyfriend. It was more like, I don't want to work anymore. And so I'm ready to go ahead and lay up in the house and eat bonbons and, you know, cook and clean. So let me have that back. And I, as a grown-up who has to pay these bills every month, I get where you're coming from, sis, but you went about it the wrong way.
Yeah. And I like that it didn't become a contrivance of like, oh, now he has to choose between his ex-wife and his new gay lover. He was very much like, no, fuck you, I'm with him, eat a bag of dicks.
Yes, like he was, from the very minute he walked in the door and his ex-wife was in the kitchen, he was like, bitch, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
And he, at every point, shut her down. And she's like, but I made a mistake and I want to get you back. Like, he confronted her about the fact that, you know, yes, you were having a tough time raising a child who was very sick, but I had to suffer through that too. And then when you left me alone, I had to do that by myself. So I don't want to hear about how hard this was for you, because this was hard for me, but I stuck around. So I just really love that that was a very real emotion. And like the divorce, even though he was kind of in this depressive haze when the show first started, I don't even think that the depressive haze was because of the disillusion of his marriage, like he wanted his wife back. I think it was more about kind of the way he has this one colleague that's trying to invite him on this archaeological dig. And he's like, you know, that's why you need to be unattached, because you need to be free to chase your dreams. And I think his depression was, I gave up so much to have this child and to be in this marriage, and I feel like I gave it up for nothing.
Right.
And that's why he was depressed, because he's like, I don't have anything to show for all of the stuff that I gave up to be in this position. But,
right, and that's why there's a scene where he's in the bar with his friend who wants him to go on this archaeological dig that could last years. They don't know how long it's going to last. And he officially turns him down. He's like, nope, I'm not going to do it. You know, I found my dream has changed. And it's like, it's nice because his dream became finally he realized he can probably have the family he's always wanted to have.
Right.
Know? And that's so sweet. And it reminded me of Tangled. Because that's how Tangled ends, and it's such a cute thing. I don't know, at the end of Tangled where like Eugene's dying and Rapunzel's like, you were my new dream, and she's like, and you were mine. It's just like, it's kind of cheesy, but it's so cute. So when it happened to this, I was like, yeah, that's nice. That's so sweet. Good for
that
you.
was really good. I also like the fact that like they didn't pull the whole I knew the whole time thing. So the professor and the nanny met when the nanny was 16, because the nanny had been heavily bullied by the kids at his school, and one day in a very depressive state, he's like, I'm just going to let someone fuck me. I don't care who it is. I don't care what we do. Just do it. So he's in like an alleyway about to be fucked, and the professor stops it because he's in his school uniform. So the professor recognizes this is a high school student.
Right.
And so he fights off the guy who's about to take advantage of the high school student. And the high school student's like, do you want to fuck me? And Professor's like, wake up. he can't just be around here throwing ass at people. You have to take care of yourself. But when they meet again in the future, the student automatically recognizes the professor because, I mean, this was a very pivotal moment in his life. It prevented him from, like, I guess, devaluing himself. The professor doesn't recognize him at first. And it isn't until he's, like, starting to recognize his own feelings for the nanny that he's like, oh, yeah, I remember him. I remember what we talked about. I remember who he is. And I really appreciated that.
Right.
Because it made his revelation feel even more natural. Like, I knew he was who the whole time, and I knew he might have been. No, he's like, oh, wow, we may actually be meant to have something. So I thought that was really, really good. And then, like, the fact that he kept kind of reiterating the same advice that he told him back then, that came up later on, and it became kind of the theme about dreams changing. I just thought that was a really nice follow-through on that particular piece of advice.
That was good. Their story was really sweet. Like, and it was good enough to them being pretty much the only couple that we saw.
Yes, like there was a little bit of side couple action with the best friend and the hot director.
I mean, it was like lukewarm at best. It was not much.
It's barely anything. One thing that I found a little bizarre, and maybe you could tell me how you felt about it. So, sexy director is actually the uncle of the little girl because his sister is the ex-wife. And I was just like, okay. I mean, not to poke holes in storylines, but like this whole time that you and your ex-wife have been divorced, her uncle never came around. She never spent any time with her grandparents. Like, how could he not know, or how could he not have been introduced earlier in the storyline as being the uncle?
Right. It came out of nowhere.
It did. I'm like, wait, y'all are related? What?
It definitely felt like, everyone needs to be connected in some way. And they just like threw that in to throw it in.
Yeah, and I mean, I get it because I think with a production that's as small as that production was, they didn't want to have any wasted actors. And I get that. But I still felt like this person has been too close in friendship to the nanny for it to never have come up, by the way, I am your charge's uncle. I'm related to her, and I used to be the brother-in-law of the professor. Like, how that never came up in conversation, I don't know. So that was the one thing that I'm like, I could have lived without this particular connection. But outside of that, I think it was just really well done. I was not as happy with the acting for this series as I could have been. One thing that I found just kind of threw me out of the action sometimes is that the nanny, his acting felt very, like, scared all the time. And I mean, part of it is probably because of the past trauma and kind of always being unsure. But it's just like, he cried a lot. And there were some times where I'm like, quit crying. Please stop.
He did cry a lot. I think my biggest complaint with his acting was most of his crying was bad. Like,
yes.
And he's one of those people where I think when he naturally cries, it looks like he's smiling. And that does not read on camera well. So I think the crying was bad.
Yeah. So that was the thing that kind of pulled me out every once in a while. The other thing that I really liked was when they had the first kind of, I won't say confession scene, but when the professor first lets on that he would like to date the student, and he's like, you should expect more, the student runs away, and then he doesn't show up to the professor's class. And I'm like, classic avoidance. No, it wasn't. He had appendicitis. He had his appendix removed.
Yeah, I hated that. That was dumb.
I thought it was good because it seemed to me like he's not necessarily running away from the family. He like is legitimately taking some time off for his health. And I thought that was good because it was an indicator that like he still might want to explore this, not that he's like totally running away from his feelings.
I didn't like it because it didn't add up to anything. And I don't particularly love when if he would run away and be like, I'm avoiding the family. Because he does say, so here's what happens. He says, nope, I quit. No, I'm going to run away. And then he doesn't show up for a while. And it's, because he has appendicitis. And you're like, okay, but then he still quits. And then the professor's like, please come back to work for us. And then he does. So they do still have him running away from the family and quitting, which is why the appendicitis doesn't make sense as a story point, because it literally comes out of nowhere. It means nothing. It does nothing. It was nothing. If they cut it, nothing would have changed. Literally nothing would have changed.
I don't know. We wouldn't have gotten the let me hold you while you bend over moment and the let me touch your stomach while you're on the couch moment. So those were nice.
But then they should have played it up more. Like, it coming out of nowhere and being like a buck of a trend doesn't work just for being a buck of a trend. Like, I'm not giving it points for doing that. I think it actively like negated parts of the story. Like it wasn't set up. It didn't add to enough of anything for it to make sense. It was actually one of the bigger criticisms I had for the show. I was like, that there was like parts of this narrative that come out of nowhere and make no sense, and they don't have a good follow through. And this was the one that I would say didn't. I think they could have cut it for sure.
One thing that I would have liked to have seen, and I feel like this may have gotten cut out of the Vicky version, because full disclosure, I watched this show when it was on YouTube before it was purchased by Vicky, and then they pulled it off of YouTube. And I want to say that there was a scene that showed where the popular guy had confessed to the nanny back when they were in high school, and we never saw that. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I wish that scene was in there is because I think it makes the nanny not look crazy, because you kind of get context clues that like he's not making it up that the popular guy likes him. And he says, he asked me out first, I didn't ask him out. And I think I would have liked to have seen kind of like, what was it about the popular guy and the way he approached him that made him feel confident that I can be out with you and it's okay if people know that I'm with you. Because I think that would also help to understand why he got so broken down. Mm-hmm. Like if this guy is like, hey, I'm going to hold hands with you. Don't you worry about it. It's you and me. And then all of a sudden, like everything you told me was a lie.
Right.
So
that could have been dealt with. Yeah, that would have been a nice scene.
Yeah, so I would have liked a little bit more of like what happened in high school. But outside of that, I really think that Right or Wrong is super cute, and I hope that people will watch it because it is the cure to like the bops, the blues. If you're feeling kind of boopsy and you just need a little something to pick you up, I think Right or Wrong does a good job of just being a happy virus, especially like all the moments that they spend as a family, like when they're doing like their little playing at the park, and then they're swinging on the swings, and they're doing the little paper cut-ups in the dining room. Like, they're adorable.
It was so cute. That's why it felt so nice when at the ending, like, the last scene is like, they're going to go to the girls, like, I don't know.
She's reading an essay at school, I guess.
Some stupid kid thing. And the student's like, no, I'm not gonna go. And it's a 2-year time skip. And we're like, the scene before they said, let's get married after 2 years. And then one of the last shots of the show is like, no, but both my dads have to go. And she puts their hands together and they both have rings. And you're like, that's so cute.
Okay. Did you laugh at the proposal scene when they're sitting on the bed and he accepts the proposal and they're about to kiss and the little girl comes in the room and he just like totally pushes her to the side so he can finish his kiss? She's like, Daddy!
I like that whole scene. I like the beginning where they're playing the game, and I like that the professor just very impromptu says, "Let's get married in 2 years," because it felt like one of those moments where it's like, the person I'm looking at right now, I just fucking love them, and I gotta be with them. And I thought that was so sweet. It wasn't a big scene. It was very casual, but it was just like so spur of the moment. Like, I love this person with all my heart. And you're like, yeah. And then
Yeah.
like the teacher a few times like kind of pin the student to the wall, and then like they reverse that where the student pins the teacher to the wall, and he's like, "So you asked me to marry you," and then the teacher like rustles his hair, and the student's like, "Ah," and it's just like the dynamic was really well thought out.
Yeah. They make it seem like they're the couple that will actually last.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like that is a thing too. Quiet as it's kept, a lot of boys' love stories are couples where you're like, this is not going to last. Like, as much as we like Dark Blue Kiss, Pete and Cal are not going to last.
Yeah.
But this couple felt like they were going to last because they just seemed like they understood each other and they knew when to push and when to pull.
Right.
Yeah, so. All right.
I will say, I want to talk about one thing real quick. I hated the first 10 minutes of this. And I didn't like it because I didn't think the story made sense. And they skipped over the inciting incident. I was like, I can't believe they did that. They talked about the inciting incident. They didn't show it. So the inciting incident is the call to action, so to speak. So like in Hunger Games, it's when Katniss volunteers as tribute. That's the inciting incident. That's what gets the plot going. And the inciting incident of this story is when he's asked, and when he is asked to be the nanny. That should have been the inciting incident to really get these people together and get this story going. And they don't show that scene. So it starts with this little girl runs up to the student and his best friend, and she's like, "A creepy man's chasing after me." And they're like, "No, he just works for us. He just looks kind of creepy. Sorry about that, kid." And she's all alone, so they take her to her house. And like her dad's there and he's asleep on the ground. And then that's it. That's the end of the scene. And then it cuts to them in class and they're like, "Oh, our teacher, she's having a baby. So we have a new teacher instead," which was also dumb and didn't make sense. And it was like, he should have just been their teacher from the start. Shouldn't have been any rigmarole with that. And then they're like, "Oh."
I think that was just to make it seem like, okay, so I thought that the clue that we got that he was the nanny was him fixing food. For some reason, I thought the food came before the classroom scene. But I thought that they did that to show that, like, he didn't always know that this was his student, that this person became his student through a series of events. That way, we don't get the feeling that he bullied him into being his nanny because he is his student. So that's what I thought that was about.
Oh, I just thought it was like first day of class.
Yeah, so.
Either way, it could have been dealt with better. Anyways,
yeah.
Smash cuts to them, and then they're like, "Oh, that's our teacher. Whoa." And then the next scene you find out, like a few scenes later, you find out he's the nanny. And you're like, what? This came out of nowhere. This is not a thing that was described to me before. And it was just like, they could have shored up the intro a little bit better because the first 10 minutes were like very clunky. And it's honestly, same thing for Crossing the Line. The beginning doesn't make a lot of sense. Once the plot gets going, I'm fine. But like getting to the inciting incident was like an issue.
Now, I will say there was one thing in this story that I was able to resolve it in my mind the further along we got into the story, and I was like, okay, I'm okay with it. But initially, the first time I watched this, I was like, I do not like the idea of a male nanny watching over a little girl and somebody that you don't know very well at all being the caretaker of your child for multiple hours a day. Because there's like one scene where she's in the bathroom and she's like, I forgot my towel. And it's like, just a minute. And I was just thinking to myself, like, a 7-year-old girl and this person you don't know watching over your child. Like, it didn't feel good to me, but I'm glad that they made it very clear that he had very good intentions and like nothing untoward was going on. But visually, it looked really bad to me. It's not something that I would have felt comfortable with, but then again, I would never hire somebody off the street to be my child's nanny.
That's true. I think because I knew this was like a gay story, I like didn't think of it that way, but I see where you're coming from.
Yeah. Cause like there's times when he would like tickle her and they were just very like affectionate, and it's just like, I know you're gay, but still.
Yeah.
Because not all grooming is about sexuality. Sometimes it's about power.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, anyway. All right, so now it's time to talk about history crossing the line. So, history crossing the line, there is a contingent of people who still believe that we're going to get a second season of it. And let me tell you now, it's not happening. Initially, when History Crossing the Line came out, there was talk, or it was told by the production team to people that they were currently writing and getting ready to do a sequel to Crossing the Line. So like a season 2, or possibly like a standalone movie that continues the story. That was back in what, 2018 maybe? We're in 2020. It's not going to happen, especially now that like Zach is a whole ass daddy. It's not going to happen. So for those of you who are thinking that that's a reality, just don't. Sorry. I hate to start it with Debbie Downer, but I wanted to make sure I pointed that out. Just don't. It's not happening. Okay.
All right. So I did the story recap for the last one. Would you like to give the synopsis for this one?
Sure, why not? History Crossing the Line is about a young man who was expelled from his previous high school and is starting at a new high school. Due to his kind of delinquent nature, he somehow or another gets bullied into joining the volleyball team by his physics teacher. He joins the volleyball team reluctantly, but then someone inspires him to want to achieve greatness while also finding love. Also, stepbrother incest.
Yep, stepbrother incest, and it's not done well, because it's never done well.
Well, how can you do stepbrother incest well?
You can't.
I mean, this is what I'm saying, like,
fucking, like, by that last episode when they had, like, gotten together, they were acting very coupley and close, and, like, a little too close in public. Like, in the school hallway, where there's people, like, they're on break from class, so there's some people still in the classroom chatting, there's some people, there's a few people right next to them, and they're just, like, arm around, oh, do you want to try this apple, baby? Oh, yeah, let me take a bite of this apple. It's like, you guys are brothers, this is too much.
Okay, so I have to ask somebody who is not us. Please leave a comment down below. I've heard that skinship amongst men in Asian countries is not automatically thought of as gay. That they don't have the same kind of uber hang-ups about men cuddling each other. And so I don't know that necessarily somebody walking down the hallway, seeing them, arm around each other, sharing an apple, would automatically think this is a couple, which is ew, gross, because they're brothers. I don't know if maybe their default thought would be these are close brothers.
I don't know. It seemed a little too close. Even if like if I saw like my sisters doing that, I'd be like, that's weird. Even if you're like, I don't know.
We're looking at it from our cultural standpoint. In America, you can't be close to anybody without being accused of fucking around. Right. But in Asia, there is a certain level of closeness and skinship that men share that is not looked at as gay. And so that's why I wonder how it comes across culturally in that context.
I still think it would come across a bit strong.
Like the kissing scene on the roof, they absolutely can't do that in the hallway. Because on the roof, when they were sharing the lunchbox, and then he kisses him on the head, and then he kisses him on the corner of his mouth, no, that's too much.
I like threw up. That was so sweet. I was like, ugh.
So you can't do that around people, but like the sharing of the apple and like leaning on your brother, that part, I don't think people would see as like a dating thing, because something very similar to that happened at the bus stop when they were waiting for the bus, and the one pretended to be asleep, and so he like put his head on his chest and was stroking his hair.
Yeah, and like his hand on his boob.
Yeah, and like that wasn't seen as like, oh, you guys are being too intimate. So that's why I sometimes feel like context-wise, I miss a lot of where the line actually is there as opposed to the line here.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, yeah, the stepbrothers. So let's just get into it. So the stepbrothers became stepbrothers around year 1 of middle school. I don't know anything about the school system in Taiwan, so I don't know how many years ago that was. But one of the brothers indicated that they became stepbrothers in year 1. That was also the year that he got kidnapped, which a whole ass backstory that no one explains that I would like to see.
It was my favorite part because it was the worst part. Like, he's confessing his feelings about his brother to Delinquent, who's his best friend, and then the volleyball coach guy. He's not the coach, he's like the
volleyball manager.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, like, and he explains their backstory, and he's just like, yes, one time my brother went to go play volleyball because he was on the team, and then I got kidnapped waiting for him, and he feels bad, so he quit volleyball. And you're like, wait a sec, go back to the kidnapping. I would like some explanation.
And he's like, that's how I got this scar. And it's like, what? How did you escape? What happened?
I'm like, where's that story? I don't care about the brother incest. I want the kidnapping story. That's more.
Yeah. So I don't know how long ago that was, why that happened, what went down with that, but if I knew how many years ago it was that they were stepbrothers, maybe I could understand them both accepting these feelings. But if it's how long I think it is, based on them being juniors in high school, they've been stepbrothers now for like 4 or 5 years.
At least.
Yeah, and it just seems like it would be strange to somebody who has been so close to you, who you acknowledge you didn't have romantic feelings for initially, to all of a sudden you have romantic feelings for them. Because he said starting year 1 of middle school, we were living together. So they were living together as brothers, at least by year 1. So I don't understand that. It would be different if he's like, our parents got married last year, but I'd had a crush on him since year 1 of middle school. That I would have understood and been like, okay, you already had pre-existing feelings for each other, and then by circumstance, your parents got married.
Mm-hmm. Like in Teen Mom.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the only way you can successfully do the stepbrother relationship without it seeming extremely gross.
Right.
So
that was gross, and honestly, it was kind of tacked on. Like, whenever they cut to them, I was like, ugh, I don't care. This isn't interesting.
Well, they were tacked on, but I do appreciate that their storyline was not super long. Like, it was tacked on there, but they didn't spend too much time trying to make it a thing. It was just like to break up some of the tension in the other relationship, because really most of their storyline we see in parts 3 and 4. We didn't see any of it practically in parts 1 and 2, except for like a couple of hints that there was like some tension there, but they didn't really dive into it till way later.
Right. I really like the couple. I really like the main couple in Crossing the Line. My biggest drawback is, and I think that's why people want a season 2, is it's like they get together in the last scene. And it's like, but they're so cute. I would love to see them together. Like,
Talk about Fandy. Let's talk about Fandy. Okay, Fandy is the delinquent, right? His real name is Fandy Fan, which is a great name. I love Fandy Fan. He is the most adorable human being on the planet.
He was so good and also so cute.
He's got these big eyes and these beautiful pouty lips, and he's so like sincere and sweet.
I felt like the way I felt like him and his co-star felt like the blueprint that they used for Make Our Days Count. Like they were like Xiahao Ting and Yushigu, they were like, they took parts of those characters and made them for Make Our Days Count. And that's why we're not getting a sequel, because they made fucking Make Our Days Count.
Yeah, like that energy between them, oh gosh. Because it very much was like the volleyball manager kind of was the Shigu-esque character. Somebody who like dealt with the trauma and is just trying to like go through life according to plan now that their original plan is done. Whereas like the delinquent, he's like, I do what the fuck I want, you know, and then all of a sudden like, actually, now I'm going to be hyper focused on one thing because it's what you love and I love you. And so, yeah, very much the blueprint, very much the blueprint. But oh my gosh, he's his reaction to things, his face choreography throughout this show, I could not stop looking at him.
Oh yeah. Every time he looked at his scene partner, he was like, he loves that man. He is in love with that person. Like, you really felt it. Oh, that scene when he finally truly realizes that he likes the guy, and he like lays down on the steps and he puts his head back and he's just like, this is it. This is love. Like, it was just so sweet.
It was, and he was so tender towards his partner. So the volleyball manager, backstory, he was like the man. He was like a really excellent volleyball player, but he suffered an injury that pretty much put an end to his playing days. He's still involved with the volleyball team. He has the intention of possibly coaching in the future, so he's going to be taking sports health. He's very much invested in the sport, but physical limitations, he's never going to actually be able to play at a competitive level ever again. And this was not a very old injury, so he's still feeling a lot of the effects of his body trying to heal. So he gets leg cramps, his knee gets sore. He just has crippling moments dealing with this knee injury. And it's a pretty severe knee injury. Like, that scar was a good 4 inches long. Yeah, so it's big stuff happened. He's lucky he can walk, probably. And the moments where the delinquent is handling his knee and trying to make sure that he's okay, it's just like, oh, I want somebody to massage my legs. And then like the scene in the bathroom where he's in the towel and he's like feeling his leg and is like slowly creeping up the towel. I was like, woo!
But like in that scene too, his like facial reactions were so good, because then they get like trapped in the little shower room, in the shower stall, and he like looks down and he's like, he dropped his towel and he just like makes a face of like, oh my god, I saw it. Oh my god, I saw it. Oh my god, act calm, act calm. Like, just the range of emotions he can go through like that, it's so good.
Yeah, it's great. And then like after the shower scene, I forget what happens. Somehow, after the shower scene, everybody goes back to go to sleep. And the volleyball manager is still having aches and pains. So he like goes out of the room that everybody's sleeping in to try to walk it off. And the delinquent follows him out there and is like trying to help him with his knee again. And they go back to the sleeping room and he like cradles him down to the bed. I was like, oh my gosh, I love you! This is adorable!
And then he's like, you know what? I'm going to sleep on the same mat as him. So then he falls asleep. And then the next morning, you know, manager wakes up and he smiles. And he's like, it's like the first time you see like him having like a romantic feeling for him. And you're like, ah, he reciprocates. But then he like recoils and walks away. And you're like, no, go for it.
Yeah.
Do it. That was nice. I thought it was a cute story. I thought getting the guy to do volleyball was confusing. Like, I was not following why they forced him. Why did they want him?
Okay, so when he was running away from the truancy officer at the school, he jumped over a fence that was like on top of a wall. And they were like, oh, wow, did you see him jump? So I guess they were looking at him and like, wow, he's very athletic, just naturally. Maybe we can put him on the team. So that's what got the captain of the team to pester him about joining the volleyball team.
Okay, so here are some narrative things that I think could have been tied up when it came to volleyball. I think, first of all, it's very weird that these students don't have positions. So, backstory, I grew up playing volleyball. My dad was a volleyball coach, and me and my sisters, we all played. So I have I have a pretty good knowledge of volleyball for some reason, even though I don't look like I play volleyball. Yes, I used to play volleyball. I was a setter, and my sister was a libero, and my other sister was also a setter. Anyways, so when you get to high school level, you have a position. When you try out, you're trying out for a libero. You're trying out for a setter, you know? So I found it weird that they didn't have positions. And I think if they thought, oh, he can really jump, we'll have him be middle blocker. We'll teach him to hit the ball hard, and we'll teach him to really stuff a ball. And they kind of didn't. I think it would have been nicer had they had him be a specific role and then have sort of narrative threads that tie into that. So if they wanted him for jumping, they could have done that, but he's also kind of short. They could have had him as the libero, and that would have worked because in the first practice that they have, it's kind of like, they're like, okay, if you can catch one of the 3 serves we hit at you, you don't have to practice. You don't have to join the team. But he doesn't. And receiving, that's the libero's job. And I think it would have been like a cool narrative thing where it's like, he's the libero and they teach him how to really receive. So when they're playing their final match at the last episode, he's kind of the rock star because he's catching all of these great serves from this team. Because in the first episode, he couldn't do shit. And then last episode, he's catching every serve. I just think they could have played up the volleyball a little bit better. Sorry, that was a tangent. That was just like...
No, it's okay, because, I mean, these are the things that happen. When you have a certain field of knowledge and people portray that field on screen, you can't help but be like, okay, but in real life, A, B, C, and D. So that's...
Not even that, but just like, it just like narratively could have been tied up a little bit neater.
Well, he didn't learn how to play volleyball until the night before the match.
Yeah, he didn't know the rules. But I just think that, yeah, I thought that was like, again, it's like, do we need that? I think that could have been altered a little bit, and it would have kept this a very, very similar or the same story. I do like that they kissed during the net, though. Like, between the net, that was super cute. Oh, wait. Oh, my God. This was so stupid. Why didn't they hire anyone that knew how to play volleyball to be an extra? Why did they just have actors? Why couldn't they hire anyone that knew how to play volleyball so it looked like they could do okay? Because watching them play volleyball fucking drove me crazy, Sam. They were terrible. Everyone was terrible.
I told you, when you have knowledge of something in real life and you see it portrayed on screen, you're like, but that's not how you do that. So, I mean, for me, it wasn't a problem, but for you, I imagine it was tough.
Like, there was one drill they were doing where they were just throwing the ball over their head and then catching it. And I'm like, what? That's not a drill. They're not even setting the ball. Like, if they were setting it back and forth, I'd be like, okay, they're setting. But they just were throwing it, like, overhand and then catching it and then tossing it back. And I'm like, that's not a drill. Why aren't they peppering? What's going on? They should have had a couple people that knew what they were doing pepper in the background. And peppering is bump, set, spike. So it's you and another person, and you just bump, set, spike back and forth. So it teaches you how to control the ball in all 3 areas because you're doing it in the same line of sight. You're doing it with one person across from you. It's like the most classic thing. So like when I was growing up, my parents would be like, you guys have to be outside for a certain amount of time every day. So we would just take a volleyball and often just pepper outside. And then I'd get told to fuck off because I had older sisters and I was worse than them. And I kept messing up. But like, they should have done that. Anyways, I digress.
Okay, so the twins. The twins on the other team, first of all, they looked like Vlad the Impaler. Like, they had really severe looking faces.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a moment where it looked like they were alluding to twincest, and I'm like,
yeah,
the fuck is going on here? Like, you got the feeling that, like, not only do they kind of fuck each other, but that they try to enlist other players to be involved in their kink games.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were really giving the eyes to the volleyball manager.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that everyone around them was like, yeah, no, you can't talk to him. Don't worry about him. Don't try to talk to him. I'm like, are the twins, like, recruiters or something? Like, what the fuck is going on with these twins?
Right.
Yeah. Twins were...
That was weird. But but the main couple was cute. I don't know. I feel like I don't have a lot of, like, things to say about this one. I thought it was a very nice watch. I thought the main couple, they were both good actors. They were both extremely good looking. Like,
yes.
Glasses guy too. Ooh, he could get it.
I talked a lot about the delinquent, but let's not act like the volleyball manager wasn't hot.
Oh yeah.
He had a beautiful body. He has a really fine featured face, like smaller eyes, finer nose, smaller lips, but it worked for him. And whenever he put on his glasses, I'm like, there goes my teacher kink. But yeah, he was just, I could see where one would fall in love. And I really appreciated, because he has such fine features and smaller features, he didn't make big facial expressions, which made it him opposite someone with such huge facial expressions. I could see where narrative-wise, I can't read you. I can't tell if you like me back. I think you do, but I don't really know because you're not a super expressive person. And I thought that played really well for them as a couple visually. Yeah, so
I also think that the way that they warmed up as friends was very cute. Like, I like that, so the reason that Delinquent was kicked out of school is because he was beating up these guys. But he was beating up these guys because he was protecting this girl who was around his age, I think. And she is the manager's younger sister. So you're like, it's all
everyone is related in these fucking stories.
And she is like, I'm smitten with this guy. I'm going to cook him lunch every day. She just cooks the most vile lunches, and he brings it to him, and they have to, like, recook and, like, make things, and it was like, that was, like, a really cute little few scenes that was funny, and it got them together to interact a little bit better. It was very sweet. I liked them both.
So, like, the sister, the scene where she asked out the delinquent, and the delinquent is like, I will only date you if you're your brother. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like we all need to leave. We shouldn't be seeing this. It was so heartbreaking because, like, he was crying, like, I can't believe that you would have your sister ask me out and you would sit there and watch her do this. Don't pawn me off on her. And I'm like, oh, poor baby, your heart. So that was pretty tragic.
Everyone involved had a shitty day.
Yeah, it was bad. Okay, before we stop talking about them, though, we have to talk about the captain of the team. He is my favorite character out of everything, but also he is extremely pausy. Like, he is hands on everybody, and it's just like, sir, I get that you got a girlfriend. The girl who's writing all the notes and stuff, that's your girlfriend. But, like, you're in the bathroom grabbing people by the hips while they're at the urinal going, flower, flower, flower. And it's just like, the fuck? It's just so bizarre. I'm like, this is a lot, friend. This is a lot.
Straight guys. Am I right, ladies? But
I mean, I don't know. That's why I say, like, as handsy as he was, the captain was, that's what makes me think that some of that skinship stuff that we're interpreting as, like, you guys are being hyper romantic is just a part of what they do, because it's made very clear through a conversation that he is straight, he's not trying to date any guys, but he is, like, super comfortable touching men all the time. Like, even when they're at the volleyball retreat, he's, like, cuddled up, legs entwined with another player on one of the mats.
They, like, all were. I thought that was really funny.
So that's why it's just like, I don't know, like, what the hell is going on? But I did like his energy. I liked how, like, positive he was. I liked when they were playing how he was, like, the trash talker manager of everybody. Like, I thought he did a really good job. Yeah, so I really enjoyed his character a lot. Like, of all of the side characters, he was my favorite because it felt like he kind of did the most work in the story as a side character, because he did a lot more for their relationship than the sexy stepbrother story did for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they offered no advice, but he, on the other hand, was like, hey, you've got to make a decision. Are you going to pass or play?
Yeah.
So
And
I like
you should play. You should get it.
Yeah. Like, when he took both of the drinks, he's like, so what are you doing? You took both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I would like to talk about that cutout in their locker room. Did you notice that?
The boys love cutout?
Yes.
It must have been, this might have been based off of like a comic, because it looked like
the cover from the book that was on the delinquent's bed.
Yeah, which I liked. I was like, oh, he reads boys love. Good for him. That's what I'm saying. I think this might have been like based off of a comic, and that was the cover of the volume.
If anyone knows what that manga is, please tell us.
Yeah.
Please tell us. I have to read it. Please tell us. But yeah, I was just like, y'all are really hitting us over the head with the fact that this is a gay story. This is BL. But yeah, like, I enjoyed it. It was super cute. There are things that could absolutely be improved about this, but one of the things that they really hit the nail on the head with is the acting. The acting in Crossing the Line, to me, is light years better than the acting in Right or Wrong.
Yeah.
Because, like, the lead characters, there was never any awkwardness to the things that they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like very much the two main leads, everything had a function. There was no wasted space or wasted action between the two of them.
Right.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed them. And I thought that, I don't know, I just thought that the very last scene with them where they were kissing and then they stopped kissing and they ended with that hug, to me, that was almost more romantic than, like, just having one kiss and then walking away. Like, I want to just be close to you. I want to envelop you. That just made me feel really good.
It was super sweet. It's like why I want more. I'm like, but let's see them together.
Well, definitely, let's talk about that for a second. So, as I said earlier, there were rumblings about doing a part 2, but it didn't happen. Where do you think part 2 would have gone?
I don't know. There's a lot of narrative thread to, like, what could have, it probably would have been them in college. If I would have done them in college, or him or the main guy in college, his first year, where did he go? Are they going to do like a long distance thing? How's that going to work?
I was thinking that season 2 would be about the progression of the delinquent as a player,
mm-hmm.
and also the fact that maybe there's a little, like, shattered dream jealousy going on with the manager, because
mm-hmm.
he's starting to see the delinquent live out his dream that he'll never be able to because of his injury, and
mm-hmm.
that causing a little tension in their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Because all of a sudden the delinquent realizes, I started this because of you, but now I'm doing this because this is now my dream, and I'm trying to take it all the way.
Right.
So that would be what I would want to see in a season 2, is like them.
Like,
yeah. So
I'd love it if they did more volleyball. I mean, it could basically just be Haikyuu, but canonically gay. For those who don't know, or anyone that probably does know, Haikyuu is really popular. Haikyuu is like, it's just that very popular volleyball manga and anime. And parts of this, they even mentioned it in the show, which I was like, hey, because Haikyuu is like top 3 favorite manga / anime for me. I love Haikyuu. And the main characters a little bit reminded me of the Haikyuu characters. It's like if Kageyama got injured, he'd still be the manager, because he'd still want to be around volleyball. And then Hinata, they're not the exact same character, but the delinquent was fairly, like, energetic, and he also had this natural athleticism, but he kind of sucks at volleyball, but he has natural athleticism that leads him to being good at it. So that reminded me of Haikyuu, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was lightly based off of it.
Yeah. And also I could see him, like, as he's getting better at volleyball, also the twins kind of popping in and kind of seeding disruption because they're like, listen, you're really good, but your team sucks. You should join our team if you really want to pursue it in the big leagues because we're headed to the Olympics. And him being like torn between his friendships at his old school, his lover who he feels is kind of tension because he's being successful, and also like, I want to see how far this dream can take me. Maybe I should join this much more professional unit and be a part of something that's really going somewhere. So like I could see a lot more having to do with the game being a part of season 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, now it's time for ratings.
Both of them get the same rating for me.
Huh?
Both of them will get the same rating from me.
Okay. I think I am giving both of them similar ratings. I really do think I'm probably doing a 7.75 for right or wrong, and then an 8 for crossing the line. And I say 7.75 for right or wrong because, like I said, the nanny, his acting sometimes threw me out of the story.
Fine. I think 7.75 is arbitrary, but I'm giving them both an 8.
Okay. Well, like I said, it's just I slightly like crossing the line more because the acting for me was a lot better, whereas I appreciate more of the family-ness of right or wrong, but the acting was a big hole in that show. And especially when you only have the one couple of the show and everything revolves around them, you've got to have really strong actors. And I just think that the kid who played the nanny, he wasn't prepared.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my only kind of drawback. Also, like, he was super old. Like, not like in his 40s, but he was a smooth, 27? And it's just like, yeah, by this point, if you're an actor, you have to have this down. It's a little too late to learn how to cry on screen.
Mm-hmm.
So, there we go. All right. Okay, so this is normally the part of the show where I launch into my rant of the week. I don't really have a rant of the week, you guys. I'm actually pretty good on boys loves goings on, if you will. I will let everybody know, keep your eye on Thailand because there's been a series of protests going on for weeks now because there was a military coup a few years ago and they became kind of the power force running the government in Thailand, and thousands of protesters are in the streets in Thailand trying to get out from under this oppressive regime. And I think it's important that you keep these things in the back of your mind. Your faves might not talk about it just because it is something to where people disappear when the government doesn't like you. So I could see why they wouldn't feel safe to necessarily talk about that. But when you have a government in line that is using intimidation and fear to rule the populace, smaller communities, more oppressed communities, they will find themselves being used as a tool to prop up these very dictator-like governments. So if they wanted to get the favor of the general public, I could see them starting to limit the rights of trans individuals, gay individuals in Thailand. So any fight for freedom is always the good fight in a lot of ways because freedom for one can translate into freedom for all in the same way. So I wish luck to everyone who's out on the streets. I hope people are safe. I hope that, people don't start going missing in large numbers, but it's a dangerous time out there. So keep them in your thoughts because this is real stuff going on. They were just talking, what was it, a couple of months ago about possibly doing same-sex marriage in Thailand. But after the survey that they launched to get people's opinions, they decided not to pursue it. So it could be that they decided not to pursue it because the reaction they got from the public was unfavorable, or this could have been kind of a gameplay by the in-power government. Like, see, we're listening to the people, they just don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reason why just keep them in your thoughts and, pay attention to the world around your faves because it all seems fun and games when you're watching cute boys kissing. But depending on how things go with the government, there might be a crackdown on that, because currently in China, you can't do boys kissing. Like, there are bromances in China, wildly popular bromances. I'm talking about You the Untamed. Wildly popular bromances that go on in China, but you can't have two men kissing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because the government has stepped into every facet of culture in China, and they said, no, none of that gay shit here. So hopefully Thailand will not be next.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my kind of rant, but it's not really a rant. So now we're at my favorite part, the Instagram of the day. So last time when we did History 1, I had a whole bunch of Instagrams to give to you guys. And I kind of have the same thing going on here. I have like the Instagrams of the lead characters in case you'd like to follow them. I'm going to start with Zach, who played the volleyball manager in Crossing the Line. His Instagram is ZACHLU 0911. So it's Zach Lu 0911. And Zach recently found out that he's going to be a daddy. So congratulations to him and his partner. I wish them nothing but the best. I feel really bad for him though, because he lost a ton of followers after announcing that a pregnancy was successful, because people are caught up in their fantasies about these people, and they're like, you bet you played gay on My Favorite Boys Love, so how can you have a woman and a child? So yeah, sorry about it. Next, we have our favorite Fendi fan, who played the delinquent in Crossing the Line. His Instagram is FAN, like a fan, 82114. And he's got a decent amount of followers. His Instagram is cute. He's just attractive. That's why I follow him. I really don't care what he posts on Instagram. As long as it's got his fucking face, I'm here for it. Then next, we have the professor from Right or Wrong, who is actually 38, so he's more in my league of age. Some of you might not be interested, but if you're looking for like a daddy to follow on Instagram, he's out here. His Instagram is Stephen Chiang 7882, so it's STEVENCHIANG 7882. His Instagram's kind of boring, not gonna lie to you. It's an old person's Instagram, so what do you expect? Then we have the character who played the nanny slash student. His Instagram is Hunt, HUNT _ Chang, CHANG. So it's Hunt _ Chang, HUNT _ CHANG. And one thing you might enjoy about his Instagram is that he's kind of like a self-trained artist. So every once in a while, he'll post some of his drawing pictures on his Instagram. So that's kind of fun. And it looks like right now he's currently drawing a lot of superhero characters. So I'm seeing Captain Marvel, and it looks like a Catwoman kind of figure on his Instagram. So yeah, it's a mixture of art, whatever's going on in his life, and then some pictures of him out in the wild. And then this one surprised me. So the older brother of the sexy stepbrother storyline, his Instagram is Patrick8589. So it's PATRICK 8589. He has the most followers out of any of the men I'm going to mention. He has 441,000 followers. And the reason it surprised me is because he was almost forgettable in Crossing the Line, to be quite honest with you. But he kind of looks like Park Seo-joon from Korea. He's like a really popular actor in Korea, Park Seo-joon. And so I think maybe that's the reason why people follow him a lot, because he does have that very Korean drama idol look. But yeah, I was really surprised to find out how many people follow him, because I really thought that Fendi Fan would be the one, because to me,
right,
he's the one.
Yeah.
And then the last one I have here is for the younger of the sexy stepbrothers, and it's Yang Nick, so it's YANGNICK, and he's got 117,000 followers, so not a significant amount of followers. But one thing that I saw on his Instagram that had me curious is he had a picture of him laying in a bed on set of some kind of like reality program or something, and the person laying in the bed with him was the main detective from History Trapped.
Oh.
Yeah, I recognized those ears immediately, and I'm like, what is this? What program are you two on?
Oh
So,
my gosh.
yeah, absolutely. Can I look? So, I mean, it might be worth following him just to keep your eyes on whatever project he's involved with to see if it's something worth watching. But yeah, I immediately recognized the main detective from History Trapped being in the same bed with him. And I'm like, is this related to the fact that they were both in history programs? Is this some kind of like adventure like, I don't know what it was, but it was definitely like them in like a queen size bed, and then next to them was a bunk bed with a few other guys. So I don't know what it was, but it might be something to keep your eyes on.
Right.
So that is all of my Instagrams of the day.
All right. Well, I don't have any manga of the week. It was kind of contingent on what I read, what I don't read. So consider it if I bring it up, I'll bring it up. But I haven't read
But
any.
Mason, your manga of the week is haiku. Haiku. How do you pronounce it? Haiku. Haiku.
No, because it's not a boys' love. It's just
it's not a
volleyball
boys'
manga.
love, but it relates to what we were talking about today. If you like volleyball.
I guess so. I mean, I love haiku, and I will cap for it any day. It gets a lot of. It's one of those shows where it's like the level of popularity it reached had it breed some unfun fans. So I think a lot of people have a negative opinion of it in that regard. But I genuinely think it's one of the best manga. It just recently finished. I think it's one of the best manga I've ever read. I could do a whole video on why I think it's that. It's perfect in almost every way. So yeah, I guess that's my manga of the week, is read Haikyuu. It just finished. There's going to be 45 volumes total. It's really good.
Also, if you're a nasty pervert like me, you can go on certain scanning sites and see some side stories by fan artists that give you the gay you're looking for.
Super good. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. If you need the gay, there are people out there that have made the gay for you if you need to relate it to the storyline.
All right. So what are we doing next week?
Next week is History 3 Trapped.
Yeah. Oh my god.
I know. We're so excited. And I debated about that only because Game Boys 11 is on YouTube as of today, and there were only supposed to be 3 more episodes. So Trapped we'll be talking about Trapped when episode 12 is airing, and we'll be talking about Make Our Days Count when episode 13 is airing. So we'll be about a week behind in terms of when the series ends for us to be talking about Game Boys. So we probably won't catch as much of the excitement or the buzz for Game Boys when we finally do our Game Boys review. But at the same time, it's not like we have 1,000 views on this stuff. Like, our views stay pretty calm. So I think that we're doing all right if we even catch it within a week.
Yeah. And I think after that, like the week after that ends would be Together ending.
Yeah. So I mean, we're doing what we can. Both Mason and I agree that episode 1 of Still Together was boring.
It was boring. I haven't seen episode 2 yet, so we'll find out today if it picks up or not. But
I started to watch episode 2, and Jenny, who's our fave, she was in the very first part of episode 2, like they do like 1 of 4. She's in the very first part, and already I'm like, I don't like this. So we'll see what happens. And I just want to clarify, I don't hate Together. We've been critical of Together, but we haven't been critical because we think that it's just a shit show. That's not it at all. We've been critical because there's so many good things going on in Together that when it gets mishandled, it makes you disappointed and upset because you know that better is a possibility. And that is going to be my main frustration when we start talking about Still Together, because I can already feel it from here. My frustration will be that I get you want to give us fan service moments. I get that you're hearing the criticism that the fans have, and you're like, oh, well, we'll address that. You didn't like the fact that they did a high five? We'll make them do a Pepero kiss. I get that, but the thing that made us like Together wasn't that we were always anticipating skinship. What we liked about Together was we liked the actors, we liked the interactions between the actors, and we liked when their interactions felt natural and it felt like the story flowed into what they were doing. And when you're forcing these, like, let's make them kiss now, let's make them hug now, let's make them do other cute, adorable shit, and it has nothing to do with any connection to a plot line, or it doesn't serve any purpose to the story, then yeah, I don't want to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess I did have a rant of the day. Go me. Okay, sorry.
And another thing. No, I'm just kidding.
But yeah, I just want to make that clear. I'm not hating on Still Together. I think that Bright and Lynn are beautiful. I think they finally got the makeup game together for Still Together, because Bright looked like a vampire for most of Together, let's be honest. Like, the neck and the face just did not match. And they got them both looking amazing this time around. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a gorgeous... Huh?
I'm telling you, Noah Centineo would be out of a job if Bright was fluent in English.
Let me tell you something. When you get ready to watch Game Boys, hold on to that thought.
Well, I know, because that one guy does look like Noah Centineo, so.
Not even that. It's just like the way he acts, you're like, oh my God, this is the reason why people fall into these terrible relationships with fuckboys. I get the appeal. Yeah. But anyway, thank you guys for joining us as always. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for watching these long-ass discussions that we have. We really appreciate your feedback. We appreciate that you're here. And if you want to leave a comment, you don't even have to leave a long comment. You can just be like, hi, I'm watching. And that would be great, because we really do want to know kind of like who's watching, why you're watching, what you're into. If you just want to say, like, in addition to Boys Love, I listen to J-pop, or in addition to Boys Love, this is my favorite manga. Anything you want to leave for us, we'd love to have it, because we really are looking to interact with you guys in the best way possible. And really the only way to do that is through the comment section. So if you could leave us a little note and let us know more about you, we'd love to hear from you guys. All right then.
All right. Adios.
Bye.